And has asked to be recognized as a tribe, joining the more than 50 tribes in Uganda. This comes after the neighboring Kenya recognized the Indians as a tribe in their country. Our reporter Saraj Sache met with Indian leaders from the Indian Association of Uganda, and they gave reasons why they badly need to be recognized as a tribe.
They live, work and do business in Uganda but are considered as foreigners. To them, Uganda is home, where many of them have been born, raised, live and will be cremated.
This has been my home, Uganda, ever since my grandfather moved here in 1820, somewhere around there. So that's yes. And I'm part of the Indian Association as well.
Any community goes abroad, they would always like to form or wants to do something for that's Indian. Our culture says that if wherever you are, you should work for the betterment of that land. This is what our culture and our ancestors have taught us. We all believe in that.
Many of our Ugandan families send their children out for education and they tell them not to come back. And we do the brain drain. While Indian community calls their children back either to join the business or their workforce, add on to this, and we are the ones who are stopping the brain drain.
Indians want to be a tribe in Uganda so as to have identity and a right of belonging.
Today, more than 25,000 Indians lives in Uganda, and many of them are from last 20 years have migrated. Few of them have come back from before 1972 era. Today, if we talk about in general, altogether as Indian and Asian.
So beautiful guys, we know that Indians came here through trade, and some of them, or maybe the majority, came here through the British when they came to construct the East African Railway, or if you like, you can call it the Kenya-Uganda Railway, you know. However, there's something which happened in 1972 when Idi Amin sent away all the Indians he sent all the Indians out of Uganda, you see. And now, what follows is this. We've had the perspective from the Africans, the African perspective of what went down and how it happened. And now, I think it would be fair. It's always fair to have a story from the other side, try and learn what really transpired on the other side, because truth does not require bias, and because truth does not require bias, we'll need to look at the sides of the Indians. In the other video we discussed, or rather we made a commentary on the sides of the Africans. Now, how was it like to be an Indian and being chased away from Africa, a country maybe you were born there, it's only your grandfather who came there, you were born there, and then you just wake up one day and you're told you need to leave the country within 90 days. You know, it was really hard for many of these Indians in the country of Uganda, you know. And so we have such a case where one of the Indian families was taken out of Uganda to Canada, where most of them resided. Yes, they went to Canada. It was not an easy task, you know. Once you are setting foot away from home, you always expect challenges and you will always experience challenges. And this is the story that we are going to discuss today and have a reaction onto. Now, without further ado, I want us to listen to the story of this Indian sister, and then I'll give you my thoughts towards the end of the video, where we will have a deep, critical analysis.
I have all Ugandans at heart, and they keep me informed, and all Ugandans, except the only few, might be opposing me, but most of them, they love me, they pass their information to me, and they want me to save them from the chaos situation which is now happening in Uganda.
The history of Uganda, the communities, the societies were organized here, respected it. So even the Asians who first came here in 1900, when they reached here like the Madivan, they really became Ugandans. The Gomes, the Goan Asian from India, who made the first Gomes, which is now one of the major female traditional dresses.
In this country, there were 3 levels of society. On top were the Europeans, in the middle were the Indians, and at the bottom were the Ugandan Africans. From the time I was a little child, I knew and had little Indian friends.
This tribe issue is to be considered. We are the most Ugandan tribe which is spread all over Uganda. Starting all the way from Moroto, Karboja side, going to Kisoro, this side come from Kaboka to Kaboko, from Kaboko side all the way down to Rakai. Indians were spread all over the place.
In Kenya, Indians have been recognized as the 44th tribe. This means Kenyans of Indian descent are now a tribe in Kenya. Recognizing Indians as one of the Kenyan tribes came during the election campaign and is seen as a move by the incumbent, President Uhuru Kenyatta, to win their support.
This we should take a leaf. We started the petition much earlier, and they overtook. Unfortunately, Kenya is always a step forward than Uganda. I really don't understand. While we conceive ideas, they conceptualize the ideas. Now, this is another thing. Economically also we have the same problem in Uganda. Socially we are the same. We conceive ideas, conceptualization is done by our neighbors faster. And it's a welcoming move, I think, even if a leaf can be taken from that by the parliament of, especially the Constitutional Court and the parliament in Uganda, and understand that we are here. We are voters as well.
Uganda has 65 indigenous communities who speak different languages. The Indians believe that they too can be recognized as one of them and named the Bayindi. Bayindi is a Bantu word meaning the Indians or people of Indian origin. There are more than 25,000 Indians living in Uganda, largely in Kampala and Kenya. These have their association under which they follow their rules, such as paying membership fees.
Annual membership is 25,000. Life membership is 250,000. When times come, when volunteerism, when we do any charitable activities, any other social gatherings, everybody can get involved here. And we take the help from members as and when the time requires.
Most Indians arrived in Uganda between 1901 and 1930 to build the Uganda Railway. After its construction, some settled in Uganda and became traders. Others returned to India, and there were those who lived and died in Uganda. Indian traders have become a driving entrepreneurship force that contributes to the development of Uganda. That was until 1972. In 1972, President Idi Amin expelled 80,000 Indians and Uganda's economy deteriorated. Some returned in the 1990s and restored their possessions, including businesses, and are now contributing to nearly 70% of Uganda's economy.
We have for years been part of the country Uganda. There was an unfortunate situation which happened in 1972, but we will not cry about that. We'll take it as a lesson learned, as a history, and we move forward.
Their return has seen them invest heavily in various sectors. To date, more than 70% of the top taxpayers in the country are businesses owned and managed by Indians, contributing in excess of 65% of the domestic revenue, playing a big role in Uganda's development.
Many years in Uganda, on the economic side, Indian community is in forefront in many industries, manufacturing, banking, financial, insurance sector, hospitality sector, in various sectors. Yeah. Indian community plays a vital role. As per the statistics from Uganda Revenue Authority, Indian community contributes more than 60% into direct revenues.
Dominating the business sector, the Indian community calls for a need to work together as Ugandans to build Uganda. Indians are criticized for paying peanuts and racially discriminating Ugandans. In response, they are calling for a need to understand the different culture differences between Ugandans and Indians.
We have the Busogas, we have the Nyankoles, Bunyoro. So those are tribes within our, so Indians have that, and our cultures are different. So we don't interfere. But as Indians today, we are Ugandans. So there is one umbrella called the Indian Association. And that's all. We don't have any squabbles within the communities at all.
As for now, Indians can only await to see if their demand to be recognized as a tribe in Uganda will be accepted by the government and parliament.
We intend to go through the Constitutional Court and hopefully it will be presented either in the Constitution or in the Parliament, get approved, hopefully. But we have a strong case. We again reiterate that we are not here for the land purposes. Most of the tribal issues over here is pertaining to their land areas and this thing. We are not here. We are here to get our right. You might call it. It's just a what you call a virtual tribe or something like that. Yes, but it gives us a sense of belonging to our mother country, Uganda.
The Indian community in Uganda, through their association, have fronted a need to be considered as a tribe here in Uganda, something that has already been embraced by neighboring Kenya. However,
I kind of sympathize with some of these Indians. However, we've also had these challenges where some of these Indians were not being so good to Africans. And maybe this is one of the things that made Africans to act in the way they did. My message is always one. Do to others what you'd want others to do unto you. The struggle of leaving Uganda was not an easy one, all right? And for now, the sister's story should be a reminder of one thing. When you are in a foreign country, any foreign country, what you need to understand is that we have policies in that country. We have laws in that country. We don't just act like there's nothing else. Because we're in a foreign country, we need to respect those people. And it's always nice, it's always wise also to have a contingency plan. What happens if they didn't have a contingency plan? What happens then if they didn't have the Canada going on? It would have been really, really hard. Now, I want us to talk about Africa. And let's talk about who truly belongs to Africa. This is a very important question. Who is an African? Many days, many times I have spent time trying to ask people on the street and asking myself as well, who is an African? Many times I've gotten many different answers. Some people say an African is somebody who was born in Africa and acknowledges that he's an African and has the African ancestry. So we have three parameters. Was born in Africa, acknowledges he is an African and believes that, and rather empirically or scientifically, they believe that they have the African ancestry. That's an African. And well, we know that according to today's definition might be different. Why might it seem different? It might seem different because Africa was colonized. Yes, Africa was colonized, only a few of African countries were not colonized. And the colonization of Africa brought foreigners. Foreigners came and they lived. And we had intermarriages, you know. So another definition of African was brought about. So there is an African who is having multiple ancestry, or rather dual ancestry. What happens next is the colonizer leaves Africa, he goes away, but not all of them went away. Some of them stayed, like 1% of them stayed, and some of them who stayed, the British, we had some of the Italians, particularly in the northern sides of Kenya, the Italians, and during that time we also had the Indians who are called the coolies. Yes, the Indians were calling themselves the coolies, or rather they were given the name the coolies. They came to Kenya, they came to Africa, particularly to build railway lines. Yes, they came to build railway lines because the British thought that they were easy to control, and at least they had that know-how of engineering as compared to the Africans who are still way behind, you know. Remember, India has gotten its independence in 1945. That was way earlier than very many African countries, you know. So the Indians came, they did what they did. We still have evidence of that railway line up to date. So they worked hard. And as I always say, somebody who works hard deserves praise. They deserves acknowledgement, which is more important, acknowledgement, you know. So Kenyans have acknowledged the Indians. Uganda also, they went to build the railways, you know. We've acknowledged them, and what happens is we accept them into the system. They become one of our tribes, you know. And they came to build the Kenya-Uganda railway. Remember, the Kenya-Uganda railway was touching two countries, Kenya and Uganda. So it automatically means they were also in Uganda. And you know the history with the Uganda. Uganda was also colonized by the British, you know. Uganda was colonized by the British, and however, it had some problems with political stability. We had a coup in Uganda when Milton Obote was overthrown. Milton Obote, the first president, I guess, he was overthrown by the dictator Idi Amin. Overthrew him when he went to some. Milton Obote had gone for some presidential visit or diplomatic. He went for a diplomatic tour in another country. He came back, and there he was overthrown, like in many African countries, not only Uganda. And so Indians were accepted in Kenya as one of the tribes. In Uganda, they were also accepted. Milton Obote accepted them. This is key. So after Milton Obote has accepted them, and he's been overthrown, Idi Amin comes in and he overthrows them. He overthrows Milton Obote and nearly deconstructs the things that Milton Obote established. Milton Obote recognized the importance of foreign power. He realized the importance of private sector in the building of the Ugandan economy. You understand? Now what follows is that later on Idi Amin feels threatened, and he decides to get out, to overthrow, not really to overthrow, but to deport all foreigners, you know. And he had a lot of emphasis on two kinds of foreigners: the Jewish people and the Indians. While walking on the streets of Kampala, all he could see was the establishment of Indian shops, establishment of Indian businesses. And he felt like Indians were robbing Uganda of the opportunities of Africans. That is how Idi Amin felt. And if you come to think of it, let's get into the perspective of the late Idi Amin. He wanted just to safeguard a safe Uganda for Africans. He wanted Africa to stay for Africans. And that's why at the beginning I asked you, who is an African? Who is an African? The definition really differs, but there is one thing that stays. An African should be somebody with an African ancestry. That is an African. You understand? Another thing you should note is this.